Ladies and gentlemen, in each of us lives a deep and often silent yearning to know, not merely to survive, to align not just with what is practical, but with what is meaningful. We speak today not of surface achievements, but of the inner journey, the path which the soul carves as it unfolds through experience. But how do we know we are on that true path, not the one handed to us, but the one emerging from within? The answer lies not in clarity, but in certain signs, and today I will speak of 5. Inner conflict is often misunderstood. In the modern psyche, there is a prevailing belief that peace, clarity, and comfort are markers of being on the right path. Yet psychologically, nothing could be further from the truth. True transformation begins not with stillness, but with disturbance. It begins when the structures you once relied upon, your beliefs, your habits, your self-concept, begin to tremble under the weight of something deeper trying to emerge. This emergence is not chaos for the sake of chaos, but a necessary shaking of false order to make room for authentic growth. When one truly begins to align with their inner path, one not dictated by the external world but discovered within, the first sign is rarely serenity. More often it is discomfort, dissonance, or confusion. These are not signs of failure or misdirection, but symptoms of a psychic realignment. The conscious ego, which has long operated with a narrow sense of control and identity, begins to confront the vast, mysterious, and often contradictory material of the unconscious. This confrontation produces tension. And that tension is not a barrier. It is the doorway. Conflict arises when two or more parts of the psyche, long kept apart or suppressed, begin to make themselves known. Perhaps you feel called to speak a truth you have long silenced, or you are drawn to a path that threatens the social identity you've carefully constructed. There is often fear, guilt, or shame in these moments, not because you are wrong, but because your soul is attempting to reclaim its wholeness, and the ego resists what it cannot control. The discomfort you feel is the psyche's announcement that something essential is trying to reach consciousness. It is tempting to retreat at this stage. Many do. The mind seeks equilibrium. The ego craves familiarity. And so, when conflict erupts within, the instinct is to suppress it or medicate it away. But to do so is to miss the signal. Conflict, especially the kind that feels existential, is the signpost that your life is beginning to shed its conditioned skin. You are entering into a conversation between who you have been and who you are becoming. To walk away from that conversation is to abandon the one dialogue that truly matters. Moreover, inner conflict is a teacher. It reveals the parts of ourselves we have ignored, misunderstood, or disowned. It pushes us to ask difficult but necessary questions. Who am I beneath expectation? What do I want beyond what I've been told to want? Why do I fear this choice, and what in me is afraid to be free? These questions arise not to torment us, but to invite us to become more integrated, more whole. Each moment of internal tension holds within it a seed of self-revelation. The individual who learns to stay with this discomfort, who resists the urge to resolve it too quickly or label it as a problem to be solved, will begin to notice something subtle. In the very heart of the unrest there is vitality. There is movement. The conflict, when held with awareness rather than judgment, becomes alchemical. What once felt like friction becomes fuel. What once seemed like disorientation becomes the very compass that points toward the soul's true direction. Therefore, when you feel torn between paths, when your thoughts seem scattered and your emotions contradictory, consider that this may be the beginning of genuine psychological growth. You are not breaking down, you are breaking open. And what emerges from that fracture is not something foreign, but something essential that had long waited for permission to be seen. Synchronicity is one of the most profound and mysterious signals that you are walking in alignment with your deeper self. These are the moments when events unfold in a way that appears coincidental, yet feel charged with personal meaning. A thought you have is echoed by someone moments later. A problem that seems unsolvable finds an answer in a book you weren't planning to read. A person crosses your path at exactly the moment you needed them, though neither of you could have predicted it. These are not random happenings, though they defy logical explanation. They are meaningful coincidences, signs that the inner world and the outer world are no longer isolated, but are beginning to speak to one another in symbolic harmony. At the heart of synchronicity is the idea that the psyche and the world are not separate realms, but intimately connected. The psyche is not confined to the head. It extends into the environment, into events, into time itself. When you begin to align with your authentic path, not the path designed by fear or imitation, but the one emerging from the core of your being, this connection becomes visible. The universe begins to respond in kind. Patterns emerge that seem too precise to be accidental. These moments cannot be forced, and they do not follow a mechanical law. Instead, they arise spontaneously, as though the world is reflecting your inner state in symbolic form. This phenomenon is deeply psychological. When your conscious intentions, unconscious drives, and emotional truths begin to converge, your perception changes. You no longer see the world as a dead collection of random events, but as a mirror, rich with personal meaning. What was once considered ordinary is now infused with significance. You begin to notice things that others overlook, not because they are not there, but because most people are not in dialogue with their own inner depths. Synchronicity emerges in the space between awareness and unconscious pattern. It is the psyche speaking back to itself through the language of events. Importantly, these occurrences are not signs that everything will be easy or free of challenge. Rather, they suggest that you are in a state of participation with something greater than your individual will. You are no longer merely reacting to life, but responding to a deeper rhythm. You sense that your actions and choices are not simply products of logic, but of alignment. You make a move not because you've calculated it, but because it feels right. And then the outer world echoes your intuition with uncanny accuracy. This echo is not proof in the scientific sense, but it is evidence in the symbolic sense. It confirms that your internal transformation is resonating beyond the boundaries of your ego. Often, synchronicity appears during times of transition, when an old part of your life is dissolving and something new is beginning to form. It is during these liminal phases that the psyche becomes especially porous, and the boundary between the inner and outer world thins. These events can feel small or monumental, but their power lies in their meaning, not their magnitude. A random word in a conversation may unlock an insight that shifts your entire perspective. A chance delay may reroute your life's trajectory in a way that, looking back, feels destined. To witness synchronicity is to recognize that you are not separate from the world, but woven into it in a way that is both mysterious and intelligent. The outer world begins to mirror your internal reality, not perfectly, but symbolically. And if you can read these symbols, if you can trust the quiet voice within that whispers, "This is significant," then you begin to walk not just through life, but with it. You begin to feel guided, not controlled. So if you are seeing these patterns, if coincidences begin to feel meaningful, if events align with your inner process in subtle and strange ways, do not dismiss them. Pay attention. Life may be telling you that you are not lost, but deeply, quietly, unmistakably on the right path. One of the clearest indicators that you are aligning with your authentic path is the gradual fading of your need for external approval. This shift does not happen all at once, and it is rarely comfortable at first. For much of life, we are trained to look outward for validation. From early childhood, we learn to measure ourselves through the reactions of others, parents, teachers, peers, society at large. We are praised when we conform, corrected when we deviate, and rewarded for fitting within the norms that have been handed down to us. Over time, we build identities that are not rooted in essence, but in expectation. We become who we think we should be, not who we are. But when you begin to walk the path of individuation, when the deeper self starts to emerge and demand expression, something begins to shift within you. The approval of others, once necessary like air, starts to lose its power, not because you become arrogant or indifferent, but because you start to realize how fragile and ever-changing that approval really is. You see how much of your life has been spent chasing acceptance, shaping your words, your behavior, and even your dreams around what others would applaud. And in this realization, a quiet disillusionment sets in, not of bitterness, but of liberation. When you are on the right path, the path that reflects your inner nature rather than borrowed expectations, your sense of self begins to reorganize. You become more internally anchored. Decisions are no longer made primarily to please or avoid rejection, but to honor something deeper, your truth, your values, your unique psychological fingerprint. This doesn't mean you stop caring about people or becoming reckless in your interactions. It means that your actions begin to come from a place of alignment rather than performance. You speak because something true needs to be said, not because you want to be liked. You choose a direction not because it is popular or applauded, but because it resonates with something essential inside you. This shift can be unsettling at first. You may begin to disappoint others. You may be misunderstood. Those who once celebrated you may become uncomfortable with your change, and in those moments the temptation to revert to the old self, the one who knew how to keep everyone pleased, can be strong. But each time you resist that pull and stay loyal to your inner compass, something grows stronger within you. Integrity begins to replace image. Fulfillment replaces approval. The mask falls away, and the face beneath it starts to breathe. What's important to understand is that this shift is not a rejection of connection, but a redefinition of it. When you no longer seek approval, you open the possibility for real relationships, ones based on authenticity rather than performance. You invite others to meet the real you, not the version of you crafted for applause. And in doing so, you begin to encounter a new kind of recognition, not the fleeting high of praise, but the deep resonance of being seen for who you truly are. As this unfolds, your sense of identity becomes less reactive and more rooted. You may still feel fear, you may still face criticism, but these no longer define your direction. You are no longer driven by the hunger to be accepted. You are guided instead by the need to be whole. Approval loses its grip not because it becomes meaningless, but because your life has taken on a deeper meaning, one that doesn't depend on how others perceive you, but on how you relate to your own soul. So if you find yourself letting go of the need to please, if you notice that your choices are beginning to reflect your inner truth rather than outer applause, keep going. You are not becoming selfish or distant. You are becoming real. You are exchanging imitation for authenticity, and that is always a sign that you are on the right path. When you begin to walk the path of genuine self-development, one of the most telling signs is the emergence of your shadow. The shadow represents the parts of the psyche you have disowned, rejected, or repressed. Traits, memories, desires, and impulses that were once unacceptable to your family, your culture, or even to your own conscious self-image. These aspects are not gone. They live within you, waiting for a moment of vulnerability or openness to make their presence known. And when you step onto the right path, one that leads toward wholeness rather than perfection, they begin to surface. This experience is rarely pleasant. It may feel like regression, like falling backward into old habits, fears, or insecurities. You may feel shame, confusion, or even fear at what arises within you, but this is not a descent into darkness. It is an invitation into depth. The shadow appears not to destroy you, but to integrate what has long been left behind. It does not represent evil or danger in itself. It represents truth unacknowledged, and when you are brave enough to face it, you begin the slow, essential work of reclaiming the fullness of who you are. The confrontation with the shadow can take many forms. Perhaps you notice recurring emotional reactions that seem disproportionate, outbursts of anger, envy, or defensiveness. Perhaps old wounds resurface, memories you thought were buried return with surprising intensity. You may find yourself drawn to behaviors or ideas that challenge your current identity, making you question your morality, your desires, or your sense of control. These experiences are not failures. They are signs that the psyche is calling for healing, not through denial, but through conscious engagement. To be on the right path means to stop running from what is painful or unwanted within. It means turning toward the parts of yourself that were cast into the dark, not to indulge them, but to understand them. What you fear in yourself may be precisely what you need to reclaim. A person who rejects their capacity for anger, for example, may struggle to assert boundaries. One who denies their vulnerability may be unable to form real intimacy. The shadow, when unintegrated, rules us from the dark, but when it is brought into awareness, it becomes a source of wisdom, strength, and balance. The emergence of the shadow also brings humility. You begin to see that you are not as in control as you believed, that your mind is layered and complex, that your goodness is not defined by appearances. This awareness is not meant to lead to despair, but to depth. As illusions fall away, what remains is more honest and more human. You become less concerned with appearing flawless and more committed to becoming whole. It is important to meet the shadow without judgment. To label it as wrong or evil is to miss its message. The shadow is not here to sabotage your growth. It is your growth. Its arrival means you are strong enough to face it. It signals that you are no longer trying to live a divided life. By encountering it, you expand your capacity for compassion, both toward yourself and others. You understand more clearly why people struggle, why pain repeats, and why authenticity requires discomfort. So if you find yourself facing aspects of yourself you once denied, if you feel overwhelmed by memories, emotions, or impulses you cannot fully explain, do not turn away. This is the work of integration. This is the movement toward psychological maturity. Keep going. You are not breaking down, you are breaking through. The shadow does not appear to destroy you, but to complete you, and those who dare to meet it with awareness and humility find themselves walking the deepest, truest path of all. As you begin to walk a path that aligns with your deeper self, a subtle but powerful shift occurs. You stop trying to control every aspect of your life and start sensing that you are being drawn by something greater. This does not mean surrendering to passivity or abandoning responsibility. Rather, it means recognizing that your life is not solely a product of your conscious will. You begin to notice that your choices, thoughts, and experiences are not isolated events, but part of a larger, meaningful unfolding. There is an emerging sense that you are participating in a process that extends beyond personal ambition, a process that feels guided, not by external authority, but by something deep within your own psyche. This sense of being drawn is difficult to define, because it does not operate according to logical planning or rational control. It is not the same as having a fixed goal or clear vision. Instead, it manifests as an inner pull, a quiet certainty that, even amid uncertainty, you are moving in the right direction. You may not know exactly where you are going, but you begin to trust the path as it reveals itself step by step. You listen more closely to inner signals, intuition, dreams, moments of clarity that arise without force. Life begins to feel less like a project to be managed and more like a dialogue to be engaged. This shift often emerges after periods of struggle or exhaustion from trying to force outcomes, when the strategies of the ego begin to fail, when the tight grip on plans and expectations becomes unsustainable. You are left with a deeper question: what is truly guiding me? And from this place of surrender, not to weakness but to inner wisdom, a new relationship with life begins. You may find that opportunities come not from aggressive pursuit, but from being attuned and responsive. You may realize that timing is not always yours to command, but that when you are ready internally, the external world often responds in surprising ways. This is the movement from control to meaning. Rather than seeking to dominate life, you begin to cooperate with it. You start to trust that your path is not something you must invent from nothing, but something that reveals itself as you become more aligned with your true nature. There is a sense of being in flow, not because everything is easy, but because you are no longer resisting the natural direction of your development. You experience less inner conflict between what you feel and what you do. Your values, your emotions, and your decisions begin to converge. Importantly, this feeling of being guided does not lead to complacency. It requires attentiveness, discipline, and courage. The pull of deeper meaning often asks you to make difficult choices, to let go of familiar roles, to move through uncertainty without guarantees. But in return, it offers a sense of purpose that no amount of external control can replicate. You no longer need to push against life because you are walking with it. Even challenges take on new significance. Obstacles are no longer just barriers. They become part of the shaping process, refining your character and deepening your insight. To feel drawn by something greater is not to escape responsibility, but to step into a fuller version of it. It means taking your place in a story that is larger than ego, where your individual journey contributes to a wider unfolding of human potential. You act not from fear of failure, but from devotion to what feels inwardly right. You trust that your path, though unclear in advance, is meaningful because it reflects your inner truth. So if you feel less driven by pressure and more guided by resonance, if your decisions come not from calculation but from clarity, if you sense a quiet unfolding rather than a forced direction, keep going. You are learning to live in accordance with something far more profound than control, the wisdom of the path itself. One of the most misunderstood aspects of genuine personal growth is the belief that it should follow a linear, predictable path. Many imagine progress as a steady ascent, free of confusion, doubt, or setback. But in truth, real transformation moves in spirals, not straight lines. It involves returns, re-evaluations, and periods of seeming regression. If you are truly on the right path, you will not feel like you are always advancing forward. At times you will feel lost, uncertain, or as though you are walking through the same lessons again and again. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are changing in a way that is alive, organic, and deeply human. Growth is not a mechanical process. It is psychological, emotional, and often symbolic. The self does not shed its old layers all at once. It releases them slowly, sometimes reluctantly. As you move forward, parts of your past may reemerge, not to drag you backward, but to be seen with new eyes. Old wounds may resurface, not because you are regressing, but because you are now strong enough to hold them consciously. Patterns you thought you had outgrown may return, not as defeats, but as opportunities to respond differently. This cyclical nature of development is not a flaw in the path. It is the path itself. There will be phases of clarity and momentum when things seem to fall into place and your purpose feels close. But there will also be periods of disorientation where the ground beneath you shifts and old certainties dissolve. These moments are essential. They force you to look inward, to let go of attachments, to question what you thought you knew. These are not detours. They are initiations. In the moments when you feel most uncertain, you are often shedding the very identity that cannot carry you into the next phase of your becoming. It is also common to experience symbolic deaths. Along the way, the loss of relationships, roles, ambitions, or versions of yourself you once clung to. These moments can feel like endings, but they are also beginnings. Something must die for something new to be born. This is not romantic or easy. It requires grief, honesty, and the courage to sit with emptiness until new life begins to stir. When you are on the right path, you will not avoid these symbolic deaths. You will walk through them. And in doing so, you will uncover parts of yourself that no comfort zone could have revealed. Another hallmark of true transformation is that it resists finality. There is no point at which you arrive, and all inner conflict ceases. Instead, you begin to understand that becoming whole is a lifelong unfolding. With each layer of self you uncover, another layer appears. With each insight you gain, a new question emerges. This is not discouraging. It is deeply humbling and deeply meaningful. It means that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And when you stop demanding clarity and start practicing presence, you begin to find peace even in uncertainty. If you find yourself in a cycle, one that includes progress and pause, joy and discomfort, certainty and doubt, keep going. Do not judge your journey by how straight it looks or how quickly it moves. Judge it instead by its depth, its honesty, and its capacity to make you more conscious, more integrated, and more real. The right path is not linear because the soul does not grow on a schedule. It unfolds in rhythm with something timeless. And if you are willing to stay with it, even when it spirals, even when it breaks, you will find that every twist of the path is bringing you closer to who you truly are.